It's Monday, October 6th. A very good morning to you and welcome to the Monday edition of Kusile Breakfast Show right here on Eswatini TV, the very first edition of the week. Thank you so much for choosing to start your week with us, but most importantly, start your day with us. I do hope that you had yourself a lovely weekend. Now, new face, not entirely a new face on the show, but more of a new face for the day, a different face. Actually, I'm joined by my our anchor and colleague of mine, Sanbongon. How are you doing?
I'm good. The other time I was with Sifiso and people couldn't tell us apart, but I'm okay. Thanks so much for... I hope you're well,
I'm great. How was your weekend?
I was here, so weekend was busy. We were busy with Umhlanga, which ended on a high note yesterday. And of course, we had the news later then after Umhlanga, which was in the Kusile region. So it was exciting to see. And the kids were excited, actually. Yeah.
You know, I must applaud us as a country, Sanapoy, for how well we've continued to display our culture. I mean, having to host, yes, we had the main Umhlanga at Eswatini, I think, and then the second leg moves on to Kusile, and still the numbers are just, they never cease to amaze.
It's an excitement that shows the world that we are anchored in what would be our culture, what defines us as a nation.
Yeah.
That wherever we go, we're known for our cultural events, and they're not just events, but it's just us coming together to show the world that together we can do more. And we were seeing a lot of display of dances there, and it attracts a lot of tourists that are interested in it to see that live lakangwane liyaqhubeka nekhombisa umhlaba ukuthi ngemasiko ethu kukhona lapho singafika khona. In fact, not ukuthi kukhona lapho singafika khona, siya phambili, siyaqhubeka futhi, and siyafunda nenhlonipho, siyakhona nekubumbana as a country, because together nothing can actually divide us if we are united like that.
Yeah, and I really do hope that our young people never really, get burned out, or just always show they're
always ready.
The encouragement. Just be powered up to say and be proud. Swati, this is actually our regalia and this is who we are. But anyways, coming back to the program today, October 5th marks the UN observation of International Teachers' Day, a day dedicated to honoring the men and women who shape minds, build character and lay the foundation of our future. This morning, we take a moment to step into the world of educators, their experiences and triumphs and challenges. What does it mean to be a teacher in today's changing education landscape, and how are educators navigating the demands of modern education? Secretary General of the Swaziland National Association of Teachers will help us understand the realities of teaching in Eswatini, the aspirations of the profession and the vision for its future. That's a conversation coming up at 6:30 right here on the program. And at 7:30, we'll be discussing opportunities in the pipeline with the development of the Mkondo Ngwavuma water augmentation program. IWE CEO Dr. Samson Sitole will join me to unpack what this multi-billion Emalangeni project really means for Eswatini's agricultural sector, but most importantly, the country's economic growth. So that's a conversation coming up at 7:30 right here on Kusile Breakfast Show. But first, we're going to have a look at some of the stories that are making headlines in print this morning. In our headlines in print this morning, starting off with the Eswatini Observer, whereby we see there in the image, King appreciates Lipovela Lazuma. That was during the Kudlatsela moment, whereby His Majesty King Mswati III shared the light moment with Lipovela Lazuma in appreciation of his splendid performance during the Kusile Umhlanga ceremony held at Timbangweni residence yesterday. In other stories, woman stabbed, doused with petrol over savings. That's a story on page 2 of the Eswatini Observer. In other stories, widow fights to protect 8 million Emalangeni investment. Court papers revealed that widow's husband funded entire fuel service station project, which is now allegedly hijacked by a business partner. In other headlines, Eswatini to receive 11 more U.S. immigrants today.
Now, on sports news, making headlines there, we know that the MTN Premier League kicked off this weekend. It was a KG MTN Premier League kickoff as goals were rare in the opener. Only one match saw more than 2 goals. Now, Solos FC official hurl insults on PTY Ltd Elder. Now, Cape Verde name all overseas squad. Also making headlines, we will request players' exemptions as Nsingizini in Hotspurs heads for the Total Energies CAF Champions League competition.
And moving on with other headlines on the Eswatini Daily News front page this morning, Kusile Umhlanga 2025 ends on a high note. The curtain fell on the second leg of the 2025 annual Umhlanga Reed Dance with a spectacular main day celebration at the Mbangweni residence in the Kusile region, confirming status as a vibrant display of Eswatini's enduring culture and a platform for social change. In other stories, happy maidens in awe as King does Gudlal Sale. I think that's something that our young maidens always look forward to whenever they do participate in the Umhlanga Reed Dance. In other stories, Education Principal Secretary raises alarm over mental health crisis among teachers, and Minister calls for action against unscrupulous contractors.
Big headlines on our sports news. In the Eswatini Daily News, we have the ongoing squabble around the Mbabane Swallows leadership there. The PTY Ltd order could lead to suspension of the club, that's Swallows FC, in an affidavit filed by the Absalom Ngwenya-led faction, argues that it is impossible for the club to operate under the sought order to rather of the applicant, as it will be breached in the CAF licensing rules. That's in page 23, making headlines there. And also, Kochi sends SOS to EFA. This actually, the Springboks there says this win is for the people of SA.
And those are just some of the stories we're waking up to this morning. Don't forget to keep up with the Eswatini TV News Facebook page for all the latest news events making headlines in the country. For now, we'll catch a break. When we come back, our first bulletin for the day. Stay tuned.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Mizuzu imfica ishayile insimbi yesithupha ekuseni mbukela sikuvusele sikwamukele kunathi tindzaba tikuqala telusuku kulohlelo Kusile breakfast show tethola umsakazo tethombela phambili Eswatini TV sibuka samaswati lamelibito ngengisane boyeng wakangcongwane. Sichube nato tindzaba umsebenzi wathishela uthi ulibito kuloyo naloyo thishela uphinzeke udzinge ukuthi kube nekubambisana lokukhulu etinhlangothini etitsenzekako emfundweni yabantwana. Lokho kushiwo induna yetemfundo umhlonishwa owenqumalo nakahalalisela bothishela njengoba ke njalo mhla tesihlanu enyangeni yembala umhlaba ke ugubha lusuku labothishela. Mhlonishwa owenqumalo uthi nahulumende utaqhubeka nekwenta kusebenta kwabothishela kube ngcono ngekuthuthukisa ke inhlalakahle yabo kanye ke netikolo labasebentela kuto.
Lonyaka lolusuku lwabothishela emhlabeni lugujwa ngaphansi kwesicubulo lesikhuthaza ukuthi bothishela babuke umsebenzi wabo njengaloyo lodzinga ukuthi babambisane Indvuna yetemfundo nekucecesha kuleli umhlonishwa Owen Nxumalo ithi uhulumende uyayikhathalela inhlalakahle yabothishela njengoba uyaconza ukuthi uma inakekeleke kahle bangenda kangcono kakhulu ekufundiseni isive seMaswati kude live libe ngileli thuthuke ngalokungenamkhawulo.
Umuntu nje angacala ngokubonga ingwenyama lesikhombisile libe ihlahlandlela kusina sakhatkolwa kufuna sidakhe kanjani. Simbonile ke okandaba nakakha lapha eTshendlovu wasikhombisa silidiko lokuthi ngabe sakha asifake tonke tingoni kuphelele njengoba ke lesicubulo sisho lokuthi asibambisane umuntu nje angacela ukuthi onke ematiko ngokuthelelana kwawo akabambisane umuntu nje angadumisa egameni lengwenyama nasegameni lahulumende ukuthi sibambisane sikahle sibothishela asichubeke letindzaba sikhulumisane kahle kube sonke sijabule kube nempumelelo siyabonga nje siyabadumisela lihle igalelo labo liyabonakala abantwana bangena ema-university abantwana i-character bashepa le-character yabantwana siyabonga nje kubothishela kakhulu.
Mabhalane wenhlangano yabothishela kuleli Lotville kade uthi batali baholi bemmango kanye naletinye tinhlangothi kufanele tibambise bothishela emsebentini wabo kanti futhi kunesidingo lesikhulu sekuthi bahlale baceceshwa njengoba umhlaba ugucuka njalo kakhulu kutebuciko.
Lesicubulo asibukile othishela ngqo but sibuke lokusebenta kwakhe kokuthi ngitiphi tindlela letingentiwa kuze lothishela atositakala phinde futhi asite nalabanye bothishela labasafundzela because kufundzisa msakade akusiso lesitifiketi ungasiphatha lesitifiketi kodwa abantwana babe bangaphasi akuhanjwe ke kubuyelwe emuva ke futhi ke ekolishi salo kufundiswa labothishela ngalesimanje manje ngalendlela yanyalo yekufunza nangekufundisa kuze kufundisa nekufundza lesikolweni kutoba lula.
Esitatimendeni lesikhishwe inhlangano yakamhlaba yetemfundo nemasiko i-UNESCO ithi lesicubulo salonyaka sihlose ukuthi kuthuthukiswe bunye kubothishela kanye nekuqinisa lo msebenzi webuthishela ngokuthi ukhangela abasha abothishela labatosebenta sikhatsi lesidze kuwo. Kubika Mbongo Dube kaManzini.
Kunemndeni wakaNkumane endzaweni yaseluhlendlweni losameleke imphendvulo lecacako endlungulu ukuthi uyekelisweleni kuvusa dalati lobuyela ke likhaya ngekusho kwaMusa Nkumane uthi ke bathe basavusa lo dalati kwathiwa abeme uvusa kodwa ke kude sizathu lesicacako.
Ngekusho kwaMusa Nkumane sabaneminyaka bahlala eluhlendlweni nebatali babo nemphakathi ke uyakwati lokho kodwa ke basamangele kulandzela ukuthi liphoyisa lemango lithi indvuna yithi abeme kubuyisela fenisi wabo.
Ngicelela amanye amadoda ukuthi akangibambise sakhe lidrati sivuza ke lelidrati cishe lonke ngoba ke sike saba netinkulumo mpikiswano neNdlunkulu sagcina sime kandaba zabantu wefika ke indaba zabantu wathi ucela ukuthi yonke lendzawo lesolo ibangwa cela sale sakha lidrati siyivala ngekhathi ngoba besolo singakayivaleli yonke ngekushiyela tingomo ukuthi bantu batabohle badlisa nemaloli na ukhanza ayenca angene ubhajwa lapha bese siba nenkinga sayishiya ke lokho kenyalo sesivusa lonke lelidrati ucela ukuthi uthole licingo lelisuka enduneni ithi induna icela ukuthi bangalivusi lelidrati so ungitshela so uyayekela lapha uthi ucela sikhulumisane nenduna ngiko ke lebe ngingakwadi ukuthi ngidawukhulumisana nenduna ngoba ngilungisa lidrati la ekhaya ngivusa loluphahla so iyakhuluma ke induna ikhuluma la kuye na utavusa lidrati ekhaya kufuna ngiyobika enduneni noma ngenda njani ngiko lele sekungiqaka ibhutluko ngoba leli khaleli selineminyaka leminengi lila kukwatiwa wonke umuntu ukuthi ngikaNkumane.
Liphoyisa lemangokele kungilona lithoyele lolucingo lolubuya enduneni liyachaza.
Indvuna idolo ingishayela idolo ntsambama ngisuka khona la kusebenzeni mina yathi indvuna manje ivile ukuthi ngisebenta la khaya kaNkumane so icela lokuthi ngitshele Nkumane ukuthi asekeme lokugubha la unayo indvuna ithunywe ngimfane ngohosi ukuthi abatshele mina ukuthi angitshele lo Nkumane ukuthi abeme ukugubhana.
BakaNkumane ke bathi kunamakele bekafuna ukucaba ngekhathi kwendzawo yakaNkumane lekuthiwa indzawo uyithangiselwe yindvuna. Seyishayele ke indvuna lekungubongani Shabangu yathi isesiphocosini esontweni kasite khona Kanti-ke bese sithola ukuthi leyo akusilo liqiniso njengoba siyikhanze isekhaya ngemuva kwemizuzu lesihlanu itihlalele nje. Icele-ke kungavele kumabonakude nasiyibuta ngale ndzaba yakaNkumane yathi-ke kodwa-ke iyayadi. Lo wakaNkumane-ke indvuna ithi welule efenisi endzaweni lengasiyo yakhe ngalokungekho emthethweni wayenda yakhe. Nayithumela bantfu-ke indlunkulu kumekhuta, Nkumane wabafaka incindi. Endzabeni yekudayisela lomunye make indzawo lengekhatsi kaNkumane uthi-ke ngemanga lawo ayikho indzaba lenjalo. Imetamo-ke yokuthola shifu lokungumntwana wenkosi Thondwane ayikabi imphumelelo njengoba lucingo lukhalelwa ngabanjwa eMahlandla. Lobika nguGiyani Msibi eluhlendlweni.
Amaphoyisa asemliba abophe indvodza leneminyaka lengama-23 yasendzaweni yakumakhewu ngetinsolo tekuthi ibulale indvodza leneminyaka lengama-24 ngekuyigeca ngabhusha enhloko nasehlombe. Umufi-ke ubese-ke uyashona selashwa esibhedlela The Luke Commission. Kanti-ke umsolwa lo setandleni temtsetfo kubheke ukuthi avele enkantolo yamanje speaking emsombuluko. Lisekela lemchumaniso wamaphoyisa noSipho Mnguni luvumile-ke lombiko lasekele yenaba nangaletinye tigameko letendeke kule mpelasonto.
Impelasonto yethu akukabi ngile yengce idedikigaba lapho khona siphinde sabona kuba khona loshayiswa imoto emgwaqweni, imoto lengakemi. Lokhu sikhuluma kwenteke endaweni yakukholwana ngalesihlanu ngetithuba dabo 11 ebusuku lapho khona indvodza leneminyaka lengu-22 yasemacetsheni yashayiswa imoto le kwanyalo sisayifuna ngoba asiyibonanga ukuthi ngabe lokho imoto bani, asathi futhi ukuthi beyishayelwa ngubani. Lona-ke lo washayiseka sikhuluma nje usesibhedlela. Lesiphinde sabana kokumbelayo ingodi yemoto leyenteke iTonga lenteke endaweni yasesiPhothosini lapho khona umshayeli oneminyaka lengu-30 wasesigangeni ushayiseke indvodza lebeyihamba phasi le nayo sikhuluma nje isesibhedlela uselashwa nakhona esibhedlela. Siphindeke sabona-ke lapho khona endzaweni kumbe yaselushikishikini emankayane lapho khona indvodza leneminyaka lengu-27 bayigwazile yagwaza nje amahlandla lamaningi yagwaziwa abafana kumbe lebeyihleli nabo base waseke soyasishiya emhlabeni. Lamadvodza-ke lamabili nawo laneminyaka lengu-27 nawo asendzaweni yaselushikishikini abeseke sekayaboshwa tolo ngemgcibelo ngemathuba abo-9 ebusuku kwaba khona indvodza leneminyaka lengu-45 yasesandleni bese iyaboshwa iboshwa-ke ngokuthi itholakale ilesibhamu esingekho emthethweni, isibhamu senhlobo ye-9mm pistol. Sitholakala-ke nale nombolo yaso lesibhamu vele seyihwayiwe. Saphindze-ke le ndvodza iphindze yatholakala inenhlavu yinye kanti-ke lesibhamu lesi bese ivele isisebenzisile ukuthi idubule lenye indvodza leneminyaka lengu-38 yasendzaweni yaseLungu Hawela. Lokhu-ke sithanda kusho ukuthi phela lokhu besibuya kule nyanga yaSeptemba laqhubeka kashintsha ukuthi abantu kucela balethe tibhamu into letingekho emthethweni kodwa kubuhlungu ukuthi kwananyalo sisabona tibhamu letingekho emthethweni and sititfola njeke sesititfola setende wona emacala. Siyethemba-ke ukuthi bantu besetawuchubeka basitshele thina emaphoyisa uma ngabe banayo kumbe information ethinte ngato tibhamu letingekho emthethweni ngoba ngulokhu la ukhanza ukuthi kugcine sekwendeke emacala kulesi sikhathi ukhanza ukuthi sigcine sesishiywe nabantu emhlabeni.
Kunendzawo leseyijike yaba yekulahla ketibi emangwaneni embabane. Letibi-ke tilahla ngalokungekho kwemthethweni kanti-ke tisendleleni lehamba abantwana lokungagcine-ke kungayinyukubeti nje imvelo kuphela kodwa-ke nebantwana bangaba sengotini yekudlala ngaleto tibi bagule.
Nanoma imave emhlaba kufaka ekhatsi live laseswatini atibophelele ekucedzeni konke lokunyukubeta imvelo kwasayinwa-ke netivumelwano kwagcina-ke kunemigomo yakamhlaba yetentfutfuko lekhonsako lokungema-Sustainable Development Goal ikakhulukati ligoli lesi-13 lelikhuluma ngako konga imvelo. Leyo mitamo engathi baningi labasayendela phasi kunendzawo emangwaneni embabane leseyijike yaba yindzawo yekulahla tibi ngalokungekho emthethweni. Lendzawo-ke iseceleni kwendledlana nje lehamba sive lephindze-ke isebentise nabafundzi besikolo lesincane sasemangwaneni naletinye tikolwa. Labaxoxisene nalomsakato labacele kungaveli etithombeni batsi masipala wawutsatsa umgcoma wekulahla tibi lebekukhona ngako-ke sekude lapho balahla khona tibi. Labanye-ke batsi ngemsindvo losolo ukhona wekuthi indzawo yasemangwaneni kayikho phansi kwamasipala iphansi komphakatsi ngiko-ke lokwente kutsi kufikwe la. Lokhulumela libandla letemvelo Zanzisile Hawu ucela sive ukuthi sekugweme kulahla tibi noma ngabe ngikuphi.
So the illegal dumping does cause a huge threat to the environment. Ngoba ukhanze ukuthi le waste bese it seeps into lama water streams, le khanze ukuthi sinatha kuwo, nale environment as a whole, ukuthi nale soil lesitofise ukuthi mhlambe ngalelinye ilanga utophinza uhlangele kuyo seyiba polluted ngalama chemicals laphuma la kule tibi lestilahla kablapha. Kanzi thina sinenhlanhla nje abantu abahlala ambabane kunema buyback centers lapho bangakhanza ukuthi ungathengisa le tibi takho khona. Kulama buyback centers balapha industrial sites ngala both times whereby they buy your plastic, paper and all other recyclable items.
Lokukhulumela masipala welidolobha lasembabane lakithabethe naye sichumana naye ngelucingo ngalendzaba uthi kulandzela wona-ke umsindvo ngendzaba yasemangwaneni losede sisombululo kwamanje masipala wagcine athethe isinqumo sokuthi athathe lonke lusito lwakhe lebekalunika takhamuti tasemangwaneni alugodle kude-ke kuphunywe nesisombululo kulabafanele labateka le ndzaba. Lobikako ngugiyani Msibi ngisemangwaneni yembabane.
Njengoba abaholi belive bangemahlahlandlela kunakekeleni inhlalakahle yabantu labadzala kanye-ke naletinye tinhlangothi letidzinga lusito lebandla bunye bensindiso Church in Zion ngalogoba leluleke isandla lanikelela abantu labadzala baleli bandla kanye-ke nemango ngetingubo kanye-ke nekudla. Lomnikelo wentiwe ngumbhishobhi Solomon Simelane enkonzweni lebanjelwe kuleli bandla ngalogoba.
Ngatulo kwaleti ngubo leli bandla linikelele labogogo nabomkhulu ngekudla lekuyi-rice, shukela kanye nempuphu kanti babalelwa emashumeni lamane labathole lolu sito. Umbhishobhi Solomon Simelane ukhuthata nalamanye amabandla ukuthi atinake tidzingo tebazalwane kanye netesive emangweni njengoba libandla liyingcenye yemmango.
Lokhu senabele emangweni uma ngisisekele labandleni kube kuya ngesifiso sami ngabe sonke thina amabandla sezayoni siyayenda lenkonzo kepha-ke siyabakhuthaza ngegama likaJesu ukuthi abakhanyisele ngoba bangakakhanyiselwa ngeke bayende. Kwesibili futhi mabakayifundi le ncwadi lethi sibusisiwe isandla lesiphaka kunalesemukelako ngeke bayende lenkonzo. Imali yekweshumi ngayigcina bayikhokha abazalwane ngifundisile besikhetha nje bomakela abadala nebafelokati sibathethe bafelokati nalabakhubatekile.
Labakhulumele labo labathole lolu sito babonge bagangatha kuleli bandla.
Kuncane kubonga kwami kukhulu uNkulunkulu asendele kuna ngana ngomkhulu la kalogoba ufika mncane lo mfana asebenza embiveni kepha indvula yendako bancane labangayenda lendvu lento ngomkhulu Simelane.
Ngibonge uNkulunkulu lekende le Archbishop yethu yente na umsebenzi yonke eminyaka ivame kusentela lo msebenzi wokupha bogogo nabomkhulu. Sifiso sethu kungathi lento inganza yanzele nakulamanye amabandla nawo ende lento lenhle kangaka.
Lo msebenzi bese ubanjwa kwesithupha kanti ngekusho kwembhishobhi Solomon Simelane leli bandla linemagatsha la14 lakuleli naseNingizimu Afrika kanti lihlele ukuthi onke awucale lo msebenzi njengalona. Kubika Mbongwa Dube kalogoba.
Kudebedlalo abangamakhulu lamane abantwana labangelele hlelo lenhlangano lengameleke ukudlaliswa kwebhola eAfrika lelatiwa ngele CAF African School Football Championships leyibanjelwe enkundleni yesive kaSamhlolo. Lolu hlelo lichubeke emalanga lamane.
Lehlelo la CAF letikolo lubeseke lihlanganiswa nelihlelo la Gavi kanye nenhlangano yebhola yalabamhlophe iUEFA lebehambisa umlayeto wekukhuthata kujova kwabantfwana imithi yekuvikela tifo letahlukahlukene. Elanga lokugcina kubeseke kudlalwa nayo ibhola lapho kulokunye bese kucala neluhlelo lokukhetha abantwana lababonakalisa ukuthi banemakhono lamahle. Lilunga leli komiti lenhlangano yebhola kuleli lichazile ukuthi yini bomcoka baleli hlelo letikolo.
Mhlawumbe sina grassroots esiphetha ngayo grassroots festival. Konke lokuphathizwe sikufisa ukuthi noma siditshela ukuthi kutaba ngomthelela lomuhle ekuthenini i-national team yethu iperform. Khumbula ukuthi this is a development program. Namhlanje nasibuta abantwana la, most kids have scored goals. Bangaki labashaya elinye eligoli, seeming everyone has scored. Bangaki labashaya emabili, bangaki labashaya emathathu. But now ubuka letulu sinenkinga emagoli akashayeki. Siditshela ke ukuthi laba lababukele development nabangahamba nalaba bahambe nabo baze bangene kuma squads under 15 ngaDisemba nje siyodlala. There will be selection of badlali here ba selected. Nasidlala ngaDisemba siyakholelwa ukuthi nakhona sike participate siyowin. Bangene kuma under 17, bangene kuma under 20, 23. Nabafika ku national team definitely will have good results.
Kanti lobuke kukhulisa nekudlaliswa kwebhola kuleli Bekisisa Mkhonda uthi nakunganaka insha lekusasa lingaba khona lelihle.
Mhle kakhulu lo msebenzi ngoba sithi nangeSiswati inkunzi sematholeni. Vele nasiyinaka le youth lekusasa likhona. Lesibonga kakhulu letikolo atisupportile. Sibonga kakhulu nakuCAF na UEFA bekakhona nebakaGov. Cishe kusebenzeke kakhulu ukuthi bantwana singabadlalisa kanjani baphilile phinde sibanike nama skills empilo.
Hlelo lenkhosi sukade lokhulumeleke abafundi uthi kuningi kakhulu labakufundzile.
Kuningi kakhulu because bekunama variations lahlukile, so we start from this point to the next point. So in different variations befundza about communication, about heading and stuff like that. So it was a fun experience all in all, but nje ngiva ngathi if nje ngasinikele thuba simane siphinde because it was a fun experience.
Bantwana labangama-20 batokhethwa bakhe iqembu linye lelitayo kuyodlala imidlalo yetikolo naletinye itikolo letichamuka kulamanye emave ngenyanga yeNgongoni. Lobekela umsakazo weSwatini TV kutemidlalo ngiphathizwe Msibi kalobamba.
Inhlangano ledlalisa imidlalo yehockey kuleli beyibambeka imidlalo lapho beyiqhudelene nelikhethelo lehockey laseBotswana. Imidlalo leyathiwa ke leSwatini Botswana Indoor Hockey Series ledlalelwe eMavuso Sports Center kaManzini.
Lemidlalo lethethe amalanga lamathathu bayihlukaniswe ngetigama tabomake nabobabe kanti-ke bengalapho labadlala ngamaphansi kuma-under 18 bese kuba naleyo labadzala kuma-under 18 eSwatini ihamba embili kubobabe nabomake, kwathi kuma-seniors kubobabe iBotswana yahamba embili kubomake badlale ngekulingana. Mabhalane wenhlangano yalo mdlalo kuleli Simphiwe Magagula uchaza ngobumcoka bale midlalo lebebanayo.
Kusisita kuma-rankings ethu, ema-rankings ethu kunema standards lefuna siwamithe, lokunye lokusilekelelako lapho ngule league yethu that is currently going on. The sender isimite ema targets ethu high performance. So once we meet the high performance, then it enables us ukuthi sikhone kudlala at international level.
Kanti umceceshi likhethelo leBotswana uthi lokwende ukuthi bakhethe kudlala nelive leSwatini ngolobudlelwano lobuhle lebebanabo kulamavili amabili kanti-ke futhi lemidlalo lena bayisebenzisa njengaleyo yokulungiselela imidlalo yokuhlungela indebe yomhlaba letako eminyakeni lotako.
We chose to play Eswatini as part of the growing relations that we have with them, and also to be a part of a preparatory activity to prepare for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers next year.
Kanti bokapteni balamakhethelo bathi bayajabula ukuthi bebangangenela lemidlalo lena njengoba bafundzele okuningi kakhulu kanti-ke bayafisa ukuthi lemidlalo iphindze ibuye njengaloku kuningi kakhulu labakutfolile labathemba ukuthi kutawubasita basachubeka nale midlalo.
It was really lovely having Botswana over to come play. The competition was really intense. As you can see, we kept drawing, but it was really a wonderful experience.
The experience was extremely very good having to have our guest Botswana. We played a very, very good match.
It was a life-changing experience, I can say. We really enjoyed it. We put a lot of work into coming to Eswatini.
The experience was amazing. This whole tournament really allowed us to,
work on our hockey skills, and also be against really good players and competitors from Eswatini.
Lehlangano ithi tobuka ke lamanye amave lengahle batfolana nawo njengaloku kungilenye indlela yokulungiselela yona ukuthi lemidlalo yabo ikhule evene. Lobekela umsakazo weSwatini TV temidlalo ngiphathiswe Msibi ana Fabrice Msonera kaManzini.
Right, that's how we hit the home stretch of the first bulletin of the Kusile breakfast show. We shall shift gears now and visit the weather center to see how the weather is looking up today. And also, after the break, Kusile will be in conversation with the Swaziland National Association of Teachers, that's Lot Vilagati, in conversation about the World Teacher Day that is commemorated on the 5th of October 2025. That and more right after the break.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze. Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna senze ukukhicita lokusemndeni.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
A new era of AI has started, and it is impressive. With tools such as ChatGPT, Midjourney, or Google Bard, all I really need is to write a prompt, and there you have it. And the results can be pretty convincing. Let me try something. I love elephants, cooking shows, and koalas. And there. Wow. It must be an incredible feeling to be able to create such fantastic things in an instant, right?
I have no feelings about this or anything else. I am neither conscious nor self-aware.
Interesting. Then how are you so artistic?
I may not be conscious, but I am a very sophisticated system for recognizing patterns in a large amount of data. And now I'm also able to generate new patterns.
And that's why you're called generative AI.
Exactly. You got that right.
These AI tools aren't just unleashing creativity. They're already changing science, medicine, and entire industries in ways we don't fully understand yet. And this is only the beginning. But there are dangers too. Generative AI creations can be so convincing that they create a false sense of reality. That includes fake news stories, doctored images, and videos showing things that never really happened. Okay, enough of that. And generative AI is so good at emulating people that it can emulate our biases too. If the only data it has access to is text messages about how cute my cat is, that's all it knows. And every prompt will produce responses about how cute Snuggles is. He is, though. Some say that AI could be the key to helping solve the world's biggest problems: forecasting disaster, preventing famine, even identifying new medical treatments. Others see only the dangers. At the end of the day, generative AI is just a tool, but it's a tool that could change the way we live, the way we work, and the global economy. That raises big questions, especially for us here at the IMF, because it's our job to make sure that the global economy is stable, growing, and working for everyone. Generative AI is already making companies that use and sell AI services billions. That boost in productivity could add trillions in value to the global economy before long. Take customer service agents, for example. A recent study showed that giving them an AI assistant boosted their productivity by 14%. There's a flip side, though. It could end up replacing some jobs entirely. But just like any new technology, AI could create new jobs by inspiring new industries and sectors that we haven't even imagined yet. It's all in how we manage it, with smart regulation and a healthy dose of caution. And that's why here at the IMF, we're doing the policy research to advise governments on how to create regulations that ensure AI is safe and beneficial for everyone.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba-researche, bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusembili.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Are you experiencing social isolation or loneliness? Did you know that it could increase your risk of death by up to 32%? We've all experienced some sort of social isolation during the pandemic, but some people are living with it. How does that impact your health? Here to talk about it is Alana Officer. Welcome, Alana. Talk to us about loneliness. Is it possible to have a full social diary and still feel lonely?
Hi, Vismista. Great to be here. So, loneliness refers to the discrepancy between the social connections that you have and those you want, both in terms of quantity and quality. So, yes, it is possible to have a full social diary with many engagements, but for these not to be particularly satisfying. For example, you may not experience the intimacy that you're seeking, or you may not feel valued and respected in those relationships, or potentially they may not be fun and enjoyable. It's also possible that in some situations you may find that your social connections are dictated more by obligation than by personal choice. And in those instances, you may have an increased feeling of social isolation or loneliness.
So you're saying that just because we're socially connected on social media, let's say, just because we're having many, many conversations, if those conversations are not positive or nurturing, that's not going to improve the feeling of loneliness, right? So talk to us about what science says is the impact of loneliness or social isolation on our health.
This is an area where we have really quite strong scientific evidence. And what it says is that loneliness and social isolation have really significant impacts on mortality and on health. For example, social isolation and loneliness increase the risk of early death by between 14 and 32%. Now, that's as much as other really well-known risk factors like smoking, drinking too much alcohol, physical inactivity and obesity. But it also increases the risk of poor physical health. For example, increasing the risk of stroke and cardiovascular disease by up to about 30%, and increasing the risk of mental health problems such as dementia by up to 50%, but also anxiety and depression.
How about work life and accomplishments? Does loneliness and social isolation also affect that?
Yeah, so social isolation and loneliness impact extends far beyond health, for example, in terms of educational and employment opportunities. For example, people who are not feeling supported or feeling disconnected within the workplace tend to have lower job performance and lower job satisfaction. And interestingly, current research suggests that these impacts are similar across the world.
So Alana, talk to us about some ways, some effective solutions that we can remain socially connected.
So, Vismita, there's lots of things that we can do. For example, investing and nurturing in our existing relationships with family and friend, revisiting our priorities and the value that we give to social connection. Joining community groups is one opportunity, or volunteering, or even starting to do an activity in an area that's of interest, whether that be music or sport or art or reading. Say hello, engage in small talk with neighbours or shopkeepers. When you're in conversations, minimise distractions. Put your phone aside, or at least not look at it quite so frequently.
That's an important one, right?
It is, and we don't do it enough. But the one that I love also is small acts of kindness. Providing support to others can often make us feel less lonely and less disconnected. But if these don't help, it's important to seek support if you're experiencing loneliness and social isolation by identifying resources that are available in your community.
Thank you, Alana.
Thank you very much, Vismita.
That's Science in 5 today. Until next time, then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Hi, I'm Golda. I work here at the IMF. Our aim is to provide the best possible advice on economic policy to our member countries, helping them to create conditions so everyone prospers from economic growth. One question our economists are always getting: how can we reduce poverty and foster inclusive growth? There are a few ways to think about it. Some say the government should be heavily involved in the economy, with regulations to keep people safe and high taxes that fund and support a healthy, well-educated and inclusive society, even if it's at the expense of higher growth. Others believe that the government should have little or no part to play in the economy. Lower taxation means more money in everyone's pockets. More individual freedom, they say, means more economic growth overall. But maybe there's a target we all could be shooting for: the best policies on inclusion and growth. Essentially, inclusive growth is about making the economic pie bigger and sharing those slices more widely. So, how do we get there? By aiming for a middle ground. Both sides mostly recognize the need for social safety nets, public pensions, unemployment insurance, food programs. These measures prevent extreme poverty and provide a basic standard of living. At the IMF, inclusive growth is central to our work because reducing poverty is in everyone's interest. Part of having a free and equitable society is ensuring we all benefit from its growth, no matter who we are. And it's not just about creating a fair and equal chance to succeed for individuals, regions, or countries. It's about distributing growth fairly for future generations too. Overall, inclusive growth is based on the idea that wealth creation, economic freedom, and equal opportunity can and should coexist.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show. My apologies there. I understand we had promised a conversation with the Secretary General of the Swaziland National Association of Teachers on International Teachers Day and their role in a developing society and modern education. So due to technical glitches or technical errors, we are now unable to have that conversation. Therefore, moving on this morning for our international update, Philippines President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte are locked in a political battle that reads like it's straight out of a thriller. But the stakes go far beyond domestic politics. The Philippines sits at the heart of the U.S.-China power struggle in the region, and the direction it takes could ripple far beyond its shores.
This is the Vice President of the Philippines.
Nagbilin na ako, ma'am. Pag namatay ako, sabi ko, huwag ka tumigil hanggang hindi mo mapatay sila.
She's threatening to kill the president if she's killed. Even though Filipino politics is known for high drama, this was extraordinary.
Right now, the tensions have already evolved into an open feud.
The political battle between President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte is playing out like a thriller. But there's more at stake than meets the eye.
Filipinos understand the underdog situation that they're in terms of geopolitics.
The Philippines is on the front line of China's territorial claims in the South China Sea and would play a major role in any U.S. effort to counter a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan.
The Philippines is a key ally for the U.S. here in Asia. It is located in a very strategic spot.
But this alliance is under pressure as Sara Duterte backs closer ties with China, and her case is being helped by aggressive U.S. tariffs.
Well, President Trump says the U.S. has reached that trade deal with the Philippines.
Trump's presidency has upended just about every assumption you could have about America and the world.
The Philippines sits in the middle of the China-U.S. power struggle. Which way it swings will have consequences far beyond its borders. Meet the Marcoses. This is former President Ferdinand Marcos and his wife and former First Lady Imelda Marcos, who you may remember is quite the fan of footwear. And this is their son, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., also known as the current President of the Philippines. Now meet the Dutertes. This is Rodrigo Duterte, another former president, and his daughter, Sara Duterte, the current Vice President of the Philippines, who, 14 years ago, fell out with the sheriff. Problem is, President Marcos and Vice President Duterte were a team, but now they're at each other's throats and have very different visions for their country's foreign policy. Marcos Jr., referred to as Bongbong, has cultivated close ties with Washington, while his political rival has followed in her father's more pro-China footsteps.
Sara Duterte is trying to take a more neutral stance to it. She wants to work equally with both the U.S. and China.
Any change in the direction of the Philippines' foreign policy stance will have an impact not only here locally, not only in Asia, but the world at large.
And here's why. The Philippines was a U.S. colony till 1946. Located just south of Taiwan, the island chain is critical to the control of waters off the southern coast of China. Post-pandemic, its economy has grown steadily and faster than most of its regional peers.
The Philippines matters to the U.S. as it's among its allies that it uses to secure trade routes and peace in the region since World War II.
But relations between Washington and Manila are caught up in the political feud we mentioned earlier. Marcos's term is due to end in 2028. Duterte is emerging as his likely successor. Their alliance was extraordinary to begin with, but their open hostility even more so. So how did things get so wild, and what can that tell us about what to expect next? Marcos Sr. led the country for 21 years, from 1965 to 1986. He and his wife are accused of stealing $10 billion from the state during his term, as well as torturing and killing thousands of political opponents. But to his supporters, Marcos Sr. was a hero who drove the Philippines' economic development. Former President Rodrigo Duterte served from 2016 to 2022. He pivoted the Philippines towards warmer ties with China and away from the US. Currently, he's in a prison cell in The Hague. More on that later. The alliance of these two prominent families was a sure path to power, uniting disparate factions of the country into what they branded the Uni Team. In the 2022 presidential election, Marcos and Duterte romped to victory.
So the 2022 elections is essentially a coalition of convenience between two political families, harnessing the votes from north and south of the country.
It did not take a long time before the Uni Team showed problems.
Sara wanted the position of Defense Secretary. She was given education, and things only got worse from there.
Her tenure within that Department of Education started to show that there were misuse of funds.
An allegation Sara denies. As part of that investigation, a trusted aide of Duterte's was detained. The vice president decided to go live on Zoom.
This country is going to hell because we are led by a person who doesn't know how to be a president and who is a liar.
Duterte claimed her life was under threat, and she had a contract killer ready to assassinate the president if she was killed.
Sara Duterte is known as a feisty personality here in the Philippines. She's really not afraid to speak her mind. But it was really shocking at that time when you have a president and a vice president who just a few years ago were projecting an image of unity. And here you have the vice president declaring an assassination threat on the president.
Is revenge from the grave a crime?
But the tensions between Marcos and Duterte did not end there. In March this year, Marcos' government acted on an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court against Sara's father, former President Rodrigo Duterte.
He was charged by the International Criminal Court with the murder of dozens of alleged drug dealers, but human rights groups say the victims number in the thousands. He was flown to The Hague. But if this was supposed to hurt Sara, it backfired.
The Duterte clan heavily criticized this move. They portrayed this as also a surrender of Philippine sovereignty. So they said handing over the former president to the ICC was actually an act of kidnapping.
When kidnapping is allowed as a means of acquiring the jurisdiction of the accused, we think this too is a travesty of justice.
Just as the president and vice president split, so did their approach to foreign relations.
Under Marcos, the Philippines have allowed the U.S. to station more troops in more locations under their treaty agreements. There are now 9 locations in the Philippines, some of them very close to Taiwan, some of them facing the South China Sea, that the U.S. has access to and will rotate troops through, that will make investments, that will have a long-term presence.
Since Ferdinand Marcos came to power, he has really shifted the relationship with China and, of course, has moved much closer to the US.
Sara Duterte has been careful in portraying herself as pro-China.
There is no reason for you to lean towards the US. You have to always stay in the middle because you are not a part of the bigger conflicts.
She has said that the relationship between Beijing and Manila is not defined entirely by their tensions in the South China Sea.
And this is what those tensions look like. This footage is shot from a Filipino patrol ship being pursued by two Chinese vessels. Then this happens. The Chinese Navy vessel accidentally smashes across the bow of its sister ship. It's unknown if or how many Chinese sailors lost their lives in this collision.
Philippine vessels have been shown by authorities to have been water cannon, sideswiped, harassed by Chinese vessels.
China and the Philippines dispute who owns the islands and reefs in the South China Sea. China's vast claims are encompassed in what's known as the 10-dash line, which sweeps down from Taiwan to the Philippines, Malaysia, and up Vietnam's coast.
Nobody agrees with this, including a UN court that ruled in the favor of the Philippines, yet China is pushing full speed ahead with its insistence that it has sovereignty over pretty much the entire South China Sea.
China's rapidly expanding its navy and rejects the UN court's ruling. It says it's committed to upholding freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. The Philippines and its much smaller navy are overmatched. The country's foreign policy walks a tightrope, with Marcos and Duterte tugging in different directions.
The country is very vulnerable to Beijing's influence, and without the US there to back them, there's very little they can do.
US security guarantees are the bedrock of the Philippines' maritime strategy, but Trump's presidency is casting a shadow on these ties.
The Philippines, just like any other country basically in the world, is a target of President Donald Trump's trade anger and tariff wars.
Philippines' exports to the US are being hit with a 19% tariff. President Marcos flew to meet President Trump in July this year in the hope of getting a better deal. It didn't help.
Marcos got stuck with the same rate as everyone else did, despite the fact that they have opened up this access to US defense.
As Trump redefines America's role in the world, nations like the Philippines are left to wonder, can they still rely on the US?
The US is losing its commitment to its role as a peacemaker. And Trump is seeing these approaches to free trade and alliances as more of a hindrance to the United States.
Meanwhile, the feud between Duterte and Marcos continues. Duterte has pulled off an incredible reversal of fortunes, avoided impeachment for threatening to have the president killed, and impeachment for alleged corruption. She's now, with her more China-friendly policies, the most popular candidate to be the next Philippine president.
After the arrest of her father, her popularity started to increase again, and the ratings for Marcos started to decline.
The Trump administration is exerting economic pressure on its allies in the region that could give the Philippines more reason to lean away from the US.
Right, and we've just seen the report coming in from Bloomberg on the latest political developments with regards to the Philippines. After this, more international updates coming through.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusemndeni.
Welcome back. Further afield, the head of Ukraine's railways said that Russia was intensifying a campaign of airstrikes on the network in an attempt to isolate frontline communities ahead of winter. Russia launched drones at 2 passenger trains in Ukraine's northeastern Sumy region, killing one person and wounding dozens, according to Ukrainian officials.
A passenger train rendered immobile, engulfed in flames, after 2 Russian drones attacked the Shotska station in Sumy province. According to the region's governor, both staff and passengers were injured.
Today, the enemy hit the railway station in Shotska, where civilians were at the moment. During the rescue works, there was a second strike on the same railway station.
Ukrainian authorities have referred to the tactic as a double tap. A target is struck once, then again when emergency services have arrived on site. The drones hit 2 trains in the northeastern province, one of which was heading to Kyiv. The CEO of the rail company said the deadly attack was intentional.
They are doing everything to make frontline and border areas uninhabitable, so that people are afraid to go there, afraid to board trains, afraid to gather at markets, and so that students are afraid to return home.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the strike savage. Posting this video to social media, he asked Europe and America to do more than pay lip service. He wants them to act.
The Russians could not have been unaware that they were striking civilians. And this is terror the world must not ignore. Every day, Russia takes people's lives, and only strength can make them stop.
Russia has repeatedly targeted Ukraine's railway infrastructure during its war in Ukraine. Reports say there have been 40 major attacks since August.
The captain of an oil tanker that authorities in France have detained off the country's Atlantic coast, in which President Emmanuel Macron has linked to Russia, will go on trial in February over the crew's alleged refusal to cooperate, a French prosecutor said on Thursday. Macron has allegedly that the tanker belongs to Russia's so-called shadow fleet of aging tankers of uncertain ownership that are avoiding Western sanctions over Moscow's war in Ukraine. And he didn't rule out that it could have been involved in drone flights over the Denmark as it was sailing last week off the coast of the Nordic country.
Russia's so-called shadow fleet funds 30 to 40% of its war in Ukraine. Halt them and you halt Moscow's capacity to finance its operations. That's according to President Emmanuel Macron, who is calling on Europe to dial up the pressure and even to follow France's lead in obstructing the vessels.
First, because you can identify the presence of a shadow fleet on your coast. Second, because you can make sure that they are compliant with or not with international rules. But third, and it's very important, because you kill the business model by detaining, even for days or weeks, these vessels.
The French Navy boarded a tanker known currently as the Boracay earlier in the week and arrested 2 of its crew members. They were charged with refusing to obey a summons and for failing to justify the ship's nationality. The Public Prosecutor's Office in the northwestern city of Brest, near where the boat was anchored, announced Thursday that the captain will face trial in February. The other detainee had been released. The Boracay is one of 800 to 1,000 tankers, estimated to be part of a fleet used to circumvent Western sanctions on Russian oil. Shipping data shows it left a port near St. Petersburg on September 20th, heading towards India. But its route and timing has raised suspicions that it was also involved in launching the drones that disrupted Denmark's air traffic between the 22nd and 28th. Macron stopped short of directly linking the 2 incidents. He did, however, say that NATO and the Coalition of the Willing would meet to discuss joint actions to stop the vessels, in addition to current EU sanctions. Russian President Vladimir Putin called France's detention of the tanker piracy without ground.
And to this now, Israel's army said it would advance preparations for the first phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza and return all remaining hostages. The news came after Israel's launched dozens of airstrikes and artillery attacks on Gaza City overnight. Gaza Civil Defense Agency said viewer discretion is advised on the following story.
After 2 years of death and devastation, there is a slither of hope the war could end. But much is uncertain. Following an explicit order from the US president to stop the bombing, the Israeli Prime Minister's office announced Saturday that it is preparing to end its aggressive activities.
In light of Hamas's response, Israel is preparing to immediately implement the first phase of Trump's plan for the immediate release of all hostages.
Hamas on Friday partially agreed to the plan put forward by Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu last week. Pivotally, they have said they will hand over the remaining 48 hostages, some 20 of whom are believed to be alive. They are to be exchanged with 250 life sentence Palestinian prisoners, plus 1,700 people from Gaza who have been detained by Israel since October 7th. However, the group says details need to be worked out.
First of all, the procedures of the exchange of prisoners in terms of the numbers, the preparation of the appropriate environment for the release of the bodies, the stopping of the aggression in order for us to be able to withdraw the Israelis from the areas, the return of the people of Palestine, and to allow aid to enter.
Hamas has said it will surrender its governing power in the Gaza Strip, but did not confirm what role it hopes to play. Israel and its allies, however, are adamant that they will not be part of any future administration. The militant group has also not agreed to disarm, but when pushed by Al Jazeera, a spokesperson said they would hand over their weapons to whoever rules the territory. The concessions will likely prove highly contentious at Israel's next cabinet meeting, slated for Sunday.
The Israeli military intercepted the last boat in an aid flotilla attempting to reach blockaded Gaza the day after stopping most of the vessels and detaining some 450 activists, including Swedish campaigner Greta Thunberg.
This is the moment the Marinette spots Israeli naval forces. Activists on board live streaming the journey as the Israeli boat gets closer.
Everybody sit down, nobody move, hands up in the air. We're running on board, nobody move.
The footage captures the troops boarding the vessel. The global Sumud flotilla confirmed that its last ship had been stopped, saying in a statement that Israeli naval forces had now illegally intercepted all 42 of their vessels, each carrying humanitarian aid, volunteers, and the determination to break Israel's illegal siege on Gaza. Israel began intercepting ships in the flotilla on Wednesday night, and the activists on board were taken to the port city of Ashdod for processing and deportations. The 42-vessel flotilla was the largest yet trying to break Israel's blockade on Gaza. Around 450 lawmakers, activists, and journalists were sailing, along with a symbolic amount of humanitarian aid destined for the enclave. Among those detained from the Marinette, Turkish activist Sinan Akilatu, who recorded a video message prior to his arrest.
Eğer bu videoyu izliyorsanız, İsrailliler tarafından rızam dışında kaçırıldım demektir.
Turkey has already condemned Israel's decision to intercept the fleet in international waters, calling the move an act of terrorism. Meanwhile, Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir berated the activists being detained in Ashdod. In video shot during his visit, he can be heard calling them terrorists and supporters of terror.
Now, hopes for a quick end to the government shutdown faded as Democrats refused to barge in a Senate vote and President Donald Trump rereaded plans to unleash layoffs and cut across the federal government.
Just before Friday's Senate vote, U.S. House Speaker Republican Mike Johnson made a final plea to his opponents.
Please open the government so we can do that work, so that all the members of both chambers can be here to do the work, to legislate and to deliberate.
The yeas are 46.
His words accomplished little. On the third day of the shutdown, efforts to end it quickly collapsed once again, after lawmakers on both sides failed to agree on a common budget proposal. Democrats are demanding that Congress extend health care benefits, while Republicans refuse to commit to anything until the government reopens. The deadlock means the federal shutdown is set to continue into next week, with Democrats continuing to blame Republicans.
Rather than working with us to end the pain Americans are feeling because of a shutdown, Republicans have they've wasted a week, refused to talk, and exacerbated pain for America.
As the funding crisis deepens, some 750,000 employees are likely to be put on furlough. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has signaled that thousands of government layoffs could begin soon. On Friday, the White House said federal agencies are actively identifying where cuts and layoffs are to be made. The shutdown has already closed tourist sites and halted official websites, among other disruptions.
And to this now, President Donald Trump moved to deploy the National Guard on another city by authorizing 300 troops to protect federal officers and assets in Chicago, where the government said border patrol agents shot and injured a woman while firing at someone who tried to run them over.
Anger on the streets of Chicago as protesters faced off against U.S. Border Patrol agents. Earlier on Saturday, immigration agents say a group of people, including an armed woman, rammed cars into their vehicles, boxing them in. They shot the woman, who later drove herself to the hospital, according to a statement from the Department of Homeland Security.
A shooting earlier, a knives involved shooting. We want to demand an investigation because they are escalating violence. They are escalating violence in the city. This is not making anyone safer.
The same day, Donald Trump ordered 300 National Guard troops to Chicago. The White House said the president will not turn a blind eye to the lawlessness plaguing American cities. State and local officials have criticized the plan, saying it's an abuse of power. The governor of Illinois called the move unnecessary and a manufactured performance.
This morning, the Trump administration Department of War gave me an ultimatum. Call up your troops or we will. It is absolutely outrageous and un-American to demand a governor send military troops within our own borders and against our will.
With this decision, Chicago becomes the latest Democratic-run city to be targeted for the controversial deployment of troops. Meanwhile, a federal judge in Portland, Oregon, has temporarily blocked the administration from sending 200 National Guard troops there, while a lawsuit challenging the move makes its way through the courts.
Now, huge numbers turned out at pro-Palestinian rallies in Europe calling for an immediate end to the war in Gaza and the release of activists on board for the flotilla carrying humanitarian aid to the territory.
Over 250,000 people, according to the authorities, 1 million according to organisers of the demonstration. A sea of people in Rome demand once again an end to the war in Gaza. This is the fourth day of protests in Italy following Israel's interception of the international humanitarian flotilla.
The protests have grown in size. I think many people were afraid at first, but now we know we are on the right side. We are here to say something important, to shout together, stop the genocide.
The demonstration ended in the early evening with clashes between small groups of people and the police. More than 10 people were arrested. Rallies took place in many cities around the world on Saturday, but it was in Europe that they were largest. Here in Madrid, more than 90,000 people took to the streets of the Spanish capital to demand concrete action against Israel.
We must end relations with Israel once and for all. Expel the Israeli ambassador from Spain. We don't want these people here. We don't want war. We want peace.
In London, the demonstration was organised by Palestinian Action, which was classified as a terrorist organisation by the British government in early July following acts of vandalism. As a result, nearly 450 people were arrested for supporting a banned organisation.
I'm disgusted by the police, actually. They shouldn't be arresting non-violent protesters here. We have a right to protest, and Palestine Action is not a violent organisation. It should never have been prescribed in the first place.
The authorities had called for demonstrations in the country to be postponed after Thursday's knife attack outside a synagogue in Manchester, where 2 people were murdered.
To this now, youth-led protests demanding reforms to public health care and education took place in several Moroccan cities for a 7th day in a row. The group behind them is called Gens 212.
Across a dozen cities from Rabat to Casablanca, they come out for the 7th consecutive day. Youth, angered by social inequality, corruption and neglected schools and hospitals, are calling for healthcare and education reforms, and some even for the resignation of the Prime Minister, Aziz Akhanouch.
Today we are demanding what we shouldn't have to ask for in the first place, but rather should have existed beforehand. What is happening now is unacceptable from the government. We shouldn't come out for health and education.
Nationwide discontent over the under-resourced and overcrowded health sector was further ignited by the recent deaths of 8 pregnant women at an Agadir public hospital, stark proof of a decaying health system.
We have clear, fair, and legitimate demands. We are not asking for anything extraordinary. We want healthcare, education, and jobs. We need to find solutions for internships.
The protests were organised by Gen Z 212, an internet-savvy youth movement representing Moroccans born between the late 90s and 2010s. The group, which mobilised some 170,000 members via the online gaming platform Discord, surprised authorities with one of the largest demonstrations in Morocco in years. With the Africa Cup of Nations fast approaching, Morocco has invested $1.7 billion in upgrading its stadiums, funding which the youth movement insists could have been prioritised for the health and education sectors.
The protests in Madagascar have grown since last week into the largest wave of unrest the country has seen in years, tapping into a widespread discontent with high levels of poverty and corruption. Madagascar President Andry Rajoelina said on Friday, October 3rd, he was ready to listen and find solutions to the problems facing the poor island nation, but ignored calls for his resignation. He also condemned what he said was an attempt to topple his government.
The island nation of Madagascar is going through its largest wave of protests in years. Police fired tear gas at young protesters in the country's capital and in other cities. The Gen Z youth movement say they want an end to repeated water and power cuts and the president to go.
This logo means freedom for Gen Z because we are poor.
That's what happens. They take us by surprise and we're hit. This is what happens to us.
The Madagascan president is standing firm against mounting pressure to resign. Ange Raswell says external organizations, aid agencies and foreign countries are bankrolling the protest movement, motivated by designs on Madagascar's mineral wealth.
No one will benefit from destroying the country. That is why I am telling you that if I am here, if I am standing here, I am ready to listen, and above all, I am ready to lend a hand to find a solution for the country.
The UN says more than 20 people have been killed and hundreds of people have been injured since protests erupted in September. Raswell sacked his government on Monday to quell anger. That has not succeeded. The youth-led movement is using tactics seen in recent demonstrations in other countries, including Indonesia, the Philippines and Nepal.
Georgia's Prime Minister Irakli Kobazidze vowed opposition arrest after police used pepper spray and water cannons against opposition protesters who tried to enter the presidential palace in what he termed was a coup bid during a controversial election. Georgian riot police detained 5 activists on Saturday as the opposition staged a large demonstration on a day of local elections.
Tense scenes here on the streets of Tbilisi as a group of anti-government protesters tried to storm the presidential palace and police used water cannons to repel them. Earlier, tens of thousands marched through the city in what organisers said was a show of defiance against the governing Georgian Dream Party. Critics of the party accuse it of being authoritarian and pro-Russian.
We fight for our rights, for independence. We want to be our country, a member of the European Union. So we don't want to be Russia. We don't want to enter in Russia, to return in Soviet Republic. So we fight for our rights, for independence, for justice, and for human rights.
That's expression of deep crisis, which is absolutely formed by our pro-Russian and authoritarian government, and that's what's happening now.
The demonstration took place on the same day as local elections, with Georgian Dream stating it had claimed victory in every municipality across the country. It comes after a clampdown on activists and political opposition in recent months, with many of the leaders of the pro-Western opposition now in prison. The country's Prime Minister accused the protest organisers of radicalism.
We warned these individuals that the strictest measures would be taken, and those measures are being implemented. Any attempt at violence will be stopped, and strict measures will continue to be enforced in the days ahead. What we saw at the presidential palace constitutes a criminal offense, and every person involved in this violent act will be held responsible.
Georgia's pro-Western opposition has been staging demonstrations since October last year, when Georgian Dream claimed victory in a parliamentary election that the opposition says was stolen. The government has frozen discussions on joining the EU, bringing a long-standing national goal to a halt.
And to this now, members of local committees in Syria began selecting members of a transitional parliament in a process criticised as undemocratic, with a third of the members appointed directly by the interim leader Ahmed al-Sahar.
For 5 decades, Syria's People's Assembly was completely dominated by the Assad regime Ba'ath Party. Since Bashar al-Assad was toppled, the parliament has been empty, dissolved, like the constitution, by the new Islamist-led authorities. Now the goal is to rebuild. Parliament will have 210 seats. MPs won't be elected by a popular vote. Instead, 2/3 of MPs will be chosen by pre-selected electoral committees. The last third will be handpicked by President Ahmed al-Shara. Residents of the Syrian capital showed little enthusiasm.
Frankly, I am not hopeful for anything. I have no hope for anything at all. Nothing. I hope that something will happen for the better. I wish, as a person, that something will happen for the better. But I have no hope for anything.
Among the issues at stake, the fate of minorities. Northeastern Kurdish-controlled and Druze majority areas are excluded from the vote, like here in Sweden, where the Druze community has been the target of sectarian violence.
Sweden is divided. Our friends who believe in the rebuilding of Syria and are against all external interventions, they support us and they say they will stick with us. The other side, those who were really hurt by what happened in Sweden, are asking us to withdraw.
Ahmed al-Shara is seeking international legitimacy. This vote is seen as a way of showing the new leadership can accept pluralism and reform. But the process is undermined by procedural concerns, weak oversight, and the risk of political manipulation.
And to this now, Argentina's struggling President Javier Milei suffered a new setback as Congress overturned his votes of laws increasing funding for the public universities and pediatric care.
The freedom of movement for Argentina's libertarian president, Javier Milei, to implement his political agenda has been again stopped in its tracks by a hostile Congress.
La libertad avanza. Freedom advances. How? By destroying the social fabric, impoverishing the majority, ignoring pediatric healthcare, and abandoning our universities. It's painful to say, but if this continues, Caputo's reckless policies will be the grave of the Argentine people.
Two presidential vetoes were overturned in the Senate on Thursday by wide margins. Elected on a platform of economic reform and the promise of reviving the economy, his laser focus on cutting government spending has had a dramatic effect on taming inflation, but came with real-world impacts and costs borne mainly by public hospitals, universities and pensioners.
Overturning the veto means we've won the university funding law, which, if implemented immediately, would mean a 41% salary increase for workers, lecturers, and non-teaching staff. We've lost nearly 48% of our purchasing power under this government.
This loss compounds his trouncing in the capital's provincial polls last month, at the hands of a public recently exposed to a corruption scandal and generally sick of austerity, which doesn't bode well for him or his party as they look towards midterm elections at the end of this month.
Right, that's how we hit the home stretch of news making headlines international. Right about now, we take a quick break. When we come back, Nautilus Tole, my co-host, is in conversation with the CEO of Eswatini Water and Agricultural Development Enterprise, that's EWADE, right after the break.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi
aba research bafunze
being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula
nathi kufuna senze ukukhicita lokusembili
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Kusile Breakfast Show right here on Eswatini TV. Onto this now, we dive into one of Eswatini's most defining national projects, that is the Mkondo Ngwavuma Water Augmentation Program, which is actually a promise of water security and economic transformation for generations to come. Now, as the Mbageni Dam rises from the earth, so, to the rise hopes of a long or nation-long waiting to unlock its agricultural potential. But really, what does this project mean for eMaswati, and what will it take to deliver it as promised without compromise? I am now joined by EOCO, Dr. Samson Zitole. Very good morning to you, Mr. Zitole. How are you feeling?
Good morning, ma'am. I'm really good.
Good. Great to have you in our studios this morning. Can you please expand on the construction progress of the project, and are you confident that it will actually be delivered by the year 2028?
All right. The progress is sitting right now at 34% overall. With regards to the key milestones that we are expected to achieve so far, we're hitting them very well. We started off with the diversion way, which we have just completed, and we have also completed the permanent camp, which took us about 124 days. All these are happening within time and within budget. We also working on the dam wall. Right now it's sitting at slightly below 50%. We are definitely confident that by 2028 we will have a dam full of water, a dam that's functional.
Diversion were so far on time, good progress. It's been described as a triumph of vision over doubt. What challenges did you and the project team, overcome to achieve this milestone ahead of the schedule?
It's without a doubt that everything you do will have challenges. What we are doing is no exception, and it's a very massive project. It has been characterized by quite a number of challenges, which could have hampered progress. The challenges, if I may name a few, we had major industrial strikes in the project. In my recollection, we've seen 4 of them going up to the courts, but we are so excited with the fact that we have a very good justice system in the country. It was able to deal with those issues, and workers were able to go back to work and continue to deliver on their mandate as workers. We've also had a shortage of a quarry, and again, the country is well structured in terms of what steps do you take when you want a license for a quarry. That application has gone through the various processes, and right now it's at the last stage. We are hopeful that we will get the quarry at the end of the day. But with the little quarry that we have on site, we have managed to achieve significantly, and progress has gone amazingly way above what we expected, despite all these challenges. And we really thank the discipline of the contractor herself, the Sakalive joint venture, first and foremost for being willing to go to negotiations with the workers they have, and taking instructions from our coordinating partners, which is actually the supervising engineer, and our project coordination management, these parties have worked together so well in such a way that they have been able to manage all challenges that have come across as they do the work on site. We still believe, strongly believe, that things are now working well, the team is gelling, and still that gives us confidence that we will deliver on the job, which is basically the greatest milestone of this land.
Right. Now, beyond diversion, what are some of the game-changing landmarks that have been delivered? What are some of those that are actually, currently underway, and you promise to have them delivered ahead of time?
Yes, beyond just the diversion wear, which we are quite excited that it was delivered on time and on budget. Where we are sitting right now, the diaphragm wall is 36%. I may explain a bit this one because the diaphragm wall is actually a wall underground. That blocks water from going under the wall. The wall then follows after something like 25 meters deep concrete wall on the riverbed. That one is sitting at 36%. There are tough geological conditions, but we have managed to overcome all that. The riverbed is actually characterized by a very hard rock, which is very difficult to drill and to crush. Then we have the spillway, which is going on right now. That one is slightly above 50%, and we are hopeful that with these isolated wins, we will eventually come up with the dam.
Right. The Mkondo Gwavuma water augmentation project is being implemented in phases, and we have the secondary distribution channel to ZTCS joint venture, which has actually triggered criticism from local contractors and the media, claiming that EWAID and government favor foreign companies. Perhaps you would like to respond to these.
Yes, I think as citizens, I'm also a Swazi. EWAID is a Swazi company. We are all patriotic. We all would like to see Swazi companies winning tenders with us, and we believe it's part of nation building. But most critical of all is that when the country funds a project, the country is looking at value for money. And we are there as an organization to ensure that the country gets value for money in everything it does. And for that reason, we follow very strict procurement procedures. We don't want to wind up with contractors that don't qualify to do a job, because at the end of the day, that job becomes more expensive. And it's very unfortunate that when we follow those strict procedures, then our Swazi companies tend to fall on the wayside. It's a situation that we are looking at, and we're trying our level best to study it and see what sort of solutions can we come up with so that more Swazis can be involved.
Right.
It's so unfortunate that they are beaten by things that really are not of significance. For instance, when you are tendering, you have to follow the tender instructions. Most of them fail to follow the tender instructions. When you are pricing your tender document, you have to make sure that you really price according to the market costs. But some would either underprice or overprice. And that makes it difficult. Sometimes others struggle with finding the bonds. We are also looking at that. How can we help our local companies afford the kind of bonds that we look for when doing these? Otherwise, in a nutshell, we do not favor foreigners over a Maswati.
Right.
It's just an unfortunate outcome of a strict procurement procedure. In this case of the Mpageni project, we are following strictly the financier's procurement procedures. In this case is AFDB, African Development Bank. And we are checked on that. We don't just do things willy-nilly. Whatever we do, we get a no objection for it. Our evaluation report has to go back to African Development Bank, and they should give us a no objection. That is to say, you've evaluated well, you can go ahead, or no, you flouted the procedures and therefore start all over again. It's not like we are all by ourselves. We are being checked in what we do.
Right. You've alluded to the way some of the local firms are actually getting it wrong. How do you think then we can turn this from a story of exclusion to a point whereby we actually build domestic capacity and tendering competency?
Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do now, because the first step is to try and establish where exactly are they getting it wrong.
Right.
And we have spotted that. And what we will be doing going forward, we will definitely stage workshops where we will alert these contractors on where they are going wrong and how they can fix that. Basically, even in the evaluation reports, we do give feedback to them to say, your tender failed on this stage and this was the reason. Everybody is given that information purely for future improvements.
Right. What are some of the lessons that you think, given the evaluation outcomes, what lessons can local contractors actually take home?
Local contractors should learn to follow instructions. The tender process is a simple process. It instructs you what to do.
Yeah.
Just follow those instructions. That's point number one, very critical point. Number two, they must find experts that will help them fill the tender, and also experts that will help them price the tender.
Yes.
So they can avoid overpricing or underpricing. Because, for instance, if you underprice, we would still say probably there is value for money because you've given us a very low price. But there are things that we check. We check if you've priced all the items. If there are items that you did not price, then we want to know how are you going to finance those items, because definitely you will need funding for them. And most often than not, they fail to give us a convincing answer as to where will they get the funding. Otherwise, if they were to give us a convincing answer, we would still give them the job despite underpricing. So they also need to think of that. If they omit certain items, they should have a good reason why they omit them and how they will fund them. So basically, in a nutshell, that would be it. And also, just to add to that, they should start talking to the local financiers, the banks, and other institutions that can fund, especially the bonds. Our bonds are a bit steep because we're dealing with very expensive projects. If we are dealing with a 3 billion project, then we will need a bond of between 50 and 100 million. And it's not easy to have that money.
Contractual issues and business issues aside, Dr. Stole, let's go back to the project, the Mkondo Ngwavuma water augmentation program. When history looks back at it 20 years or 30 from now, what do you hope it'll say about your leadership, EWA's leadership, and national unity, and most importantly, the kind of legacy that it'll leave for the Kingdom of Eswatini, particularly the Mpageni Dam?
Well, starting with myself, I would say I'm the kind of a person that wants to be remembered as somebody that contributed to the development of the people, not to the development of the infrastructure itself.
Right.
I believe in people, not in things. I believe if we develop our people will be able to do even greater things. So I believe if I could be remembered as somebody that grew the people through the commercial irrigated agriculture in the country, that would give me a smile right at my very old age, or maybe in my grave at some point. When it comes to e-Wade, which is basically the key thing, e-Wade is the key instrument for development in the country. This project, I believe, will see Swade attaining the legacy of being the topmost parastatal in the agriculture transformation sector in the country. I believe everybody will remember e-Wade as the transformer of the agriculture sector in the country, including the water itself, because we are also doing water infrastructure development. The country, I believe the whole world, when looking at Eswatini, will always see Eswatini as a country that's quite critical about its people. The focus on the people brought about by this project tells exactly that story, that the country cares about its people. And going forward, I believe the world will remember to help Eswatini to develop its people, because at the heart of the country is the people.
Right, fair enough. Thank you very much, Dr. Stwele. Opportunities await, and so does economic growth. That was Dr. Samson Sithole, CEO of e-Wade, filling us in on the multi-billion Emalangeni project that is the Mkondo Ngwavuma Water Augmentation Program. For now, we'll catch a break. The show continues immediately after this.
Wow, what a house. Maybe a little much for me though. Okay, this is probably more like what I can afford. Unless I could borrow the money to get something a little bigger. Perfect. But borrowing means that I could be in debt. And for a lot of people, that can be intimidating. But debt is really just a way of borrowing money with the promise of paying it back with interest. That sounds okay, right? Unless I would take out a big loan that I couldn't pay back. People take out loans all the time to buy houses, cars, to pay for school, all sorts of things. And it's not just people. Companies also borrow, and governments do it too. When a government borrows, it's called public debt or sovereign debt. Governments raise this money by issuing bonds and then selling them to the public with a guarantee that they'll pay them back. Just like people, countries need money to buy or build stuff that their income, mostly tax revenues, won't entirely pay for. Governments should invest their money wisely in things that help their citizens. Think of education or healthcare. Governments can also invest in things that will generate revenue or grow the economy, like infrastructure projects. Governments can also use the money to reduce taxes, or they can give it directly to its citizens who need the support. So, why are economists sometimes concerned by public debt? Well, for all the benefits that these funds can bring, there are also risks. Let's take two countries to demonstrate. Here's country A, and here's country B. Now, let's say both of them have borrowed roughly the same amount of money at roughly the same time. But looking closer, we can see they have very different economies, notably in size, measured by their gross domestic product, or GDP. Let's look at their debt levels again, but this time as a percentage of their GDP. And wow, you see the difference? Same debt, but very different outcomes. Countries are able to manage their debt
when they borrow a reasonable amount relative to their ability to pay it. Country A's economy is big enough to pay the interest on the debt. If country B cannot pay things back, well, it gets harder to convince investors to lend you more money. And that is scary because it only gets harder from there. If an economic crisis hits, one of these guys will have the funds they need to respond. The other is going to need some help. The trick here is for governments, like country B, to invest the money they borrow wisely, which can help keep debt manageable. So, where does that leave me in my new house? Well, first, I need to adjust my own budget. I don't need that. You're gone. Definitely gone. And second, debt isn't about living beyond my means. It's about borrowing a reasonable amount relative to my ability to pay it, even if I do splurge every now and again.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. That brings us to the home stretch of the 2 hours of Kusile breakfast show. The Monday edition is September. Kutsi uvuke kahle and sawufikile emsebenzini. If you're heading there, you're already late. It's already 4 minutes before we touch 8. So nabantu besikolo ke siyakhumbula ukuthi exams for Form 5 have already started. So all the best for those that have prepared. And today was quite an interesting day, Notsile. We looked at so many things. We were hoping to have a conversation with the SNAT organization, which is the Swaziland National Association of Teachers, to which we tried, but then technology was not on our side on that regard. But as well, you just had a conversation with Eswatini Water, Agriculture and Development Enterprise CEO, Dr. Samson Stole. How was that for you and the key highlights that you had?
You know, I would say, Sanboy, the past 20-something minutes of this show have been amazing. You know, having to learn Ngale project later, in fact, that's already underway, the opportunities that it promises, not only just for our agricultural sector, but also for our, business people in the country as well. They often complain or they express concerns gogokuthi nakunema projects or imisebenzi emikhulu sokumiswa, there's often preference yetinkampani letichama ngaphandle, of which I'm glad ukuthi CEO waka iWait got to explain la ukuthi uyathi kuba ne evaluation process inkampani nenkampani ilethe timpepa tayo tibuka ukuthi kahle kahle do you meet the requirements, your evaluation, are you the right, yes, the expression of interest, are you the right person to be a part of the job. The unfortunate part is then, of course, given my requirements earlier project layer, but it's like, but not really I'd say preference, but there is that reality. Unfortunately, the foreign companies, they meet the requirements more than our local entities or local firms rather. So I think it's a call. Tendering, we need to be able to build those kind of domestic competency.
Right, and also happening today, it is, if you are aware, in environmental-wise, it is World Habitat Day. It's commemorated on the 6th of October 2025. Now, this one focuses on addressing multiple crises affecting urban areas. Siyathi-ke ukuthi emadolobha netindzawo nje leti semadolobheni nato tiningi tindlu leti affectako, and especially as far as environment is concerned, climate change is one of them. And lidolobha laseMbabane is leading and being a smart city, to which, through which they have now incorporated what we call flood detectors, and as well as taking care of the environment. And that brings us to the conclusion of what has been an interesting show here at Eswatini TV. That has been Kusile Breakfast Show. Do enjoy the rest of your day. For now, myself and Kusile, we say bye-bye.